gosh, this is okay. I have made the most ginormous faux pas in my knitting. I mean, I didn't realise until I started to sew it up that oh God. One sleeve is almost twice the length of the other. How did I do that? I measured and I'll show you, okay. I'll show you because you probably just think I'm exaggerating. I mean, I need my head looking at. I don't know how I managed that. So now I've got to try to come up with some crazy, creative way of fixing it. Do you know, if I didn't laugh, I'd cry. And then I'd laugh again. Okay, let me show you. Okay, the jumper's inside out. This is one sleeve. I'll just put it over the jumper like that. This is the other sleeve. A small inconsistency, some would say. Just a wee one. I mean, how did that happen? Oh, dear. Okay. I have made a big mistake. I don't know where I made the mistake. I haven't been drinking or smoking anything or dabbling in mind-bending things. And I really don't know where I've made the mistake because I kept measuring everything, or at least so I thought. Anyway, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put on my coat, or my jacket rather, and I'm going to go for a walk in the woodland. You can come with me if you want and think this one out. Now, my mother used to say, she was always the optimist, wherever there's a problem, Colette, there's always at least half a dozen solutions. Yeah, okay. So if I can just come up with 2 of those solutions, I think I'll be on a winner. I think one has got to be cutting the arms off. Cutting them both off to the same length and stitching them in some way, and then maybe crocheting some more sleeve onto the ends. I don't know. I will come up with a solution. I know I will. I'm going to go out now, walk amongst the trees, walk in the sacred woodland and be inspired. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. Well, I began in the back garden, just standing under the cotoneaster and just thinking about, thinking about my mum and dad. I've been thinking about them a lot recently, but I do remember so vividly now, my mother knitting. And I remember as a child when she just didn't have the money to buy wool. Occasionally we'd go to jumble sales. I don't know if you know what a jumble sale is. It used to be held in church halls and the like, and you'd have your pick of clothes and stuff, and it was a bit like a charity shop or a thrift shop, but it was a jumble sale. It was held in an evening usually, or a day, Saturday morning, something like that, or a Friday night. And she would buy up jumpers. The most grotesque jumpers. Not too badly worn. So she'd get them home and she'd unpick them. She'd unpick the jumpers. I mean, my mother always loved puzzles. You know, she right up until the day that she died, she loved puzzles. And she's a very sharp mind, very sharp. And so she'd unpick the jumpers and roll up the wool and then get one of us kids to sit with their arms out, you know, and she'd wind the wool around us, around their arms, just to straighten it out, turn it into what was called a hank of wool. And then she'd wash it and that would kind of take all the curly bits out of it and then dry it and roll it and continue her knitting. And she used to knit fantastic jumpers. I can remember her having a few patterns, you know, but it was mostly just out of her head. I'm convinced to this day that if my mother had have had the chance at all and been able to go to university, which in post-war Britain was just not happening, you know, especially for women, she would have been a mathematics genius. She had this incredible mind where she could knit the most intricate patterns in a jumper. I mean, actual, you know, faces and bodies and trees and reindeer. She'd knit these images into jumpers and not have a pattern. It would just be all out of her head. And she never made a faux pas like I've made. Yeah. Incredible woman. You know, it's only since I, say, turned 50 or so that I began to unpick, to use a knitting term, sort of unpick who my mother really was. You know, allowing her to step aside from her motherhood and all those maternal commitments that she'd made and she was so good at. And to just be herself. I don't think she ever really discovered who she was. She never had that time. You know, Virginia Woolf wrote that in order to be able to write or just to be a woman, I think, one needs to have a room of one's own. I don't think my mother ever had a room of her own, really. 11 children. 11 children. That's crazy, isn't it? And growing up, all of us growing up in such a tiny house. Very happy memories, though. You know, that's something that I've thought about a bit recently. Children themselves are not aware of poverty. Yeah, you're aware of being a bit hungry or, you know, not having the stuff that other children have or whatever. You know, there's always little pointers like that. But they're not actually aware of poverty until an adult, and it's usually an adult, points it out. And an adult doesn't have to point it out in a verbal way, in an obvious way. It can just be a vibe. You know, you pick up on someone's energy where they look at you with disdain or sidestep you or, you know. But, yeah, my childhood was really happy. We were always very creative and very innovative and great readers. Used to love to read. So all this has been going through my head today of all days with this disaster of a jumper. But in accordance with the great woman that my mother was and still is, I don't think that your womanhood dies with you. I think that is something that is eternal. You know, that opportunity to come into this world and to be a woman and to be a mother, and especially to be a mother in such hard circumstances, such difficult circumstances. But she was always a great one for solutions, you know, very practical. And I think that so many people who grew up during World War II became incredibly practical people, sensible people. They knew how to save money. They knew how to make the most of everything. They knew how to look glamorous on so little. They even sewed their own coats. I mean, imagine anyone sitting down today and saying, oh, I'm going to make myself a new coat for the winter, and actually making a coat out of very little, whatever there was around. Just amazing, you know. I mean, I'm one of the generation that was born post-war. I was born in 1955. And although the 50s and the 60s and the 70s were quite difficult, well, by the time I was 30, you know, things were good. Things were good. Lots of opportunities. And actually lots of opportunities back in the 60s and 70s as well. I was one of the last cohort of people to get a university education, be paid a grant to go to university, a living grant, and to have all my fees paid. University education was free. And I have a very simple slice of logic when it comes to education. If a country can afford to send its young people to die in war, they can afford to educate them, freely educate them. Education should be free from the cradle to the grave. Absolutely. And I think it's only when you start unpicking, I'm kind of using another knitting term now, unpicking and unravelling that very false tapestry that we've been woven into, that you begin to see just basic common sense. You know, our taxes should be used for education for all, regardless of age as well, from the cradle to the grave. Imagine how wonderful our countries would be if everybody had that access to education. So education would no longer be a privilege. It would be part of our human rights. I think I feel that strongly as well, because I know how education lifted my family, my brothers and sisters, out of poverty and into a situation where we could, for a time, help our parents, you know. Yeah. It's an interesting world, you know, when you begin to look at things through a different lens. So just to say, blessings to you all. And a little update on the calendar. I'm hoping that everything will be working as normal in the printers next week. And once I get the cover of the calendar back, I promise, put it onto the bookshop and allow people to pre-order. I had all the envelopes delivered today for the calendar. So once they come back from the press, then I'll be able to pop them into the envelopes and get them posted out to everybody. So, back to my little jumper issue. I think as well that, I'm feeling quite positive now. There will be a solution, and I think it'll look even better. Built in a cottage when I first saw it. And this is the view from the cottage, from the road up to the cottage. And this is the view from the cottage down towards the road.